I am fucking with you, dude. We will stay here. It's nice to come back.
Very good.
Let's go up shit on this fucking casino.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We're here today to talk Anora. Hayden, we're a little late to the party on this one for various reasons. I mean, the movie was in theaters in October, but it is out on digital now. We both had a chance to see it. The theater where I live, this is way too not making anything great again to go see in my theater. In October, we still had like Reagan and Am I Racist and all the other nonsense playing in there.
Nice.
So yeah, Anora wasn't going to get any screens. So sadly, I had to wait till it came out on digital. But the wait was worth it.
Yeah, I would say so too. I mean, I feel like the common sentiment around this movie is that like this is front runner for Best Picture. It's getting really high critical praise. It seems like the performances are probably up for Oscars as well. And I do think the buzz is worth it. I could definitely see this going to getting Best Picture. It will definitely be nominated. And like, while it might not be my favorite movie of the year, I think just like it's such an incredible achievement, honestly.
Yeah.
In the performances and the pacing and just like not just executing everything technically really well, but also it's got a really interesting story that I think has a perspective that is either underrepresented in film or is represented in a really disingenuous way in the past.
Well, I've seen this be compared to like Pretty Woman for the 2020s. And I don't know like how much I buy into that, but yeah, I mean, I can see some parallels. There's a lot going on in this film.
Yeah, for sure.
And it really has like almost two different movies attached because it's like the pacing up until a moment is really fast.
Yes.
Almost too fast at times. That was my only knock on it early, was that I felt like this movie was largely made for people with like no attention span. But then it like completely shifts.
Yeah. It's been described as a screwball comedy in a lot, and I do see that. I think some of that influence, because there are moments of this movie that I feel like are really funny. And some of them it's really, I felt complicated with myself because I'm like, I feel like this is funny, but like this subject matter is not funny, but they're somehow making it comedic and making there be levity in it and make it be something, that you can laugh at. And I think that was really impressive.
Well, before we give this thing a score, just a real quick high overview of what the plot is of the movie. So if you're like, what the hell is this thing? First of all, you should go watch it. But second, it is a very modern love story / fairy tale gone wrong / all of that stuff. But it surrounds Anora, the titular character. She is an exotic dancer in a high-end Manhattan club. And one night, a young man named Ivan, or Vanya, however you want to say it, comes into the club. He's visiting from Russia. He is from a family who's part of the oligarchy in Russia. Insanely wealthy.
Yeah.
She is chosen to hang out with him because she can speak Russian. So he ends up liking her. They take this romance kind of takes off, and he's like, will you be mine for the week? And they make a deal, and she does. And then they get, married. And then things take off from there. So this all happens over the course of a week. And, we won't get into what takes place afterward, but that's where you got to watch the film. So it is, it's a movie where I think all the performances are fantastic.
Oh yeah. I think the best part about this movie is the performances and just the dialogue, both from a writing standpoint, but also how naturally it's delivered. Like I think there's a really natural flow to conversation, especially argument, where you have a lot of people kind of talking over each other, interjecting in real time. And I think that's a really hard thing to capture in film or theater, really, right? Just performing, period. And they did it so well in this movie. Like, I think it's probably the best I've ever seen that executed in a film. It's absurd how real that is.
I totally agree. It, slice of life movies are like the rage today. The whole, a lot of people really like those. I see value in them, but not all the time. But the benefit of slice of life is you feel like you're hanging out with the characters, and it feels probably a little more genuine and real. This movie has that. It has that feeling of like, these are like real people. There is no like aura around anyone of that we see in some movies, in many movies, to be honest. So I think from that standpoint, I was very very happy with the film performance wise. But anyway, let's give this thing a score, and then we'll jump into some of the themes and spoilers and all that good stuff. Anyway, we love this movie. It's a 9.
Yeah,
it's one of the best films of the year. I think it's a 3-horse race, Hayden, for Best Picture at this point. I think it's this. I think it's The Brutalist, which we haven't seen yet, but as I see more and more reviews, which I've now stopped reading because I just want to go see it.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, every review is calling this when the words achievement and masterpiece are thrown out there. Yeah, you're onto something. That's probably the favorite. But then there is a pony coming up on the last leg of the race, Hayden, that I think is going to make some noise.
What's that?
That is Wicked.
Do you really think Wicked has? That's something for another
yeah, it's for another video, but I think it's going to get nominated. I think.
Yeah. No,
I think it has a shot to win. I think it's going to be the quote people's favorite.
Yeah, we'll see.
This movie is much better than Wicked. But I think there's maybe a case to be made. I don't know. But anyway, we gave it a 9. Here on in spoilers, everybody, so just fair warning. Okay.
Lots to talk about in this movie. Yeah. It's a lot of things that also, it's hard to talk about this movie without saying certain words that might get us demonetized. So if you want to support us with YouTube memberships, please do.
Yeah, also sub to the channel if you haven't yet. Hayden, at any point in this film, did you think it was going to turn out well?
I didn't think it was going to turn out well, like, before I started it. I was like, there's just no way. There's just no way. But at the same time, like, they make this couple, Ani and Yvonne, so compelling that I wanted them both to be happy, right? Like, I knew there was no way in hell it worked, but I wanted it to work because they were just so fun to watch together, right? And you talk about that kind of breakneck speed at the beginning, and I think it's definitely disorienting, but I think it's intentional, right? Because their relationship, how they're building this, is so fast paced, and they're high for most of it. And
we've been trained in movies, Hayden, that when the rich boy falls in love with the average girl, so to speak, that, and the parents don't approve, which they don't in this. That at some point the rich boy stands up and is like, no, I love her and I'm, whatever, and I'll give up everything to be with her. There were moments where, like, that I realized how much we've been trained with that, because I kept waiting for it to happen.
Me too. And it doesn't, like, right? He
at
never.
The courthouse, when they're about to get on the plane back to Vegas, I was waiting, and as they're getting on the plane to Vegas, that's where you realize this ain't happening.
Yeah.
Right. She, so his parents are forcing them to get an annulment of the marriage.
Because it's embarrassing to them and to their honor that he would marry a sex worker, essentially.
She challenges him because he won't speak to her. She challenges him and he turns around. He's like, what do you want me to say to you? And then I forget what she says, or she's like, we're going to Vegas to get this annulment. He's like, of course we are, you stupid. Yeah. And that's where you realize, like, this is one of the themes, saying that I wanted to kind of bring to the front. Like, a strong theme here is, like, the rich use the non-rich almost as playthings. And there's no feeling of consequences or remorse or anything. Go ahead.
No, like, I think she was, I think, like, when they were together, he really enjoyed her company. They did care about each other and have a great time. But I think that like it was just she was disposable to him, right? And replaceable. And I think the interesting thing about their relationship is I really think for both of them, like staying in the relationship and fighting for the relationship and wanting the relationship is less about being with the other person as a human being and more about what being in there, what that person being around can afford your life. For Anora, it's getting out of the, you know, the strip club. It's getting out of the, you know, that kind of more, I guess you'd say, grittier, grimier part of what she does and having to deal with clients that she's not attracted to and that she wouldn't hang out with if they weren't paying her.
Plus being more lower income, right? Like I've seen some discourse here like, oh, she's not low income. She's good at her job and everything. And that's all true. But the universal movie way of saying somebody is low income is when they have like a little bit of a rundown house right underneath the like
the train track.
Yeah. That is like the universal way of saying this person's poor. And
and she lives with her sister and the sister's boyfriend doesn't really get along with them, and so there's a lot of you know, I mean, and again, like she is making a decent amount of money, like I guess objectively, but think about her living in Brooklyn, like that's not not a cheap neighborhood.
Like if you're living in Oklahoma City, sure. Brooklyn not so much. But so yeah, I mean that's another one. Everything here seems to be very transactional for all characters. I mean, Yvonne quite simply is he loves the sex that he's getting and the companionship, and that's it, essentially.
Well, I don't think it's just the sex. I think he also liked having a beautiful woman around him.
Also, I said the companionship too, right?
Right. So, I think he did enjoy her coming to extent, but I also think for him it was like he wanted to stay in America. And so for him, it was like kind of a green card marriage, which I hate to use that term, but I do think like that was his intention. He even said he was like the gears turn and he's like, you know, when they're kind of close to the end of their week, he's like, oh, look, I'm going to miss you. I wish I could stay in America. But like the only way you can be in America, stay in America is like if you get married. Right.
But why does he want to stay in America?
To be away from his parents.
Because he has to go to work on Monday. Right? Like he has to start a job. And he doesn't want to do that.
Yeah. He has to work for the first time in his life. Quite literally. Because his parents like give him everything. He's got all these cars, he's got this house, and you think it's all his, but he's really not like he doesn't own anything himself. Right? No. He's faking it till he makes it with mommy and daddy's cars and mommy and daddy's clothes and money and house. And it's funny because you realize that like the two Armenian guys that are there I thought they were like criminal enforcers or something like that. They kind of have this mystique around them, and they're essentially just like they're babysitters.
Yeah,
for him.
They're there to get him out of trouble.
They're there to make sure that he doesn't get the family in legal trouble and that he doesn't cause too much property damage or overcharge any max out any credit cards. Right.
Yeah, I think a lot of credit goes to the two leads in this movie. So Mikey Madison is fantastic as Anora. And I think a lock for a nomination for Best Actress. Whether or not wins is, I don't know, but
it's gonna be her or Demi Moore.
Yeah. Mark Eydelshteyn, I think is how you say it.
Okay.
As Yvonne is also just really great, and I think in a way that doesn't necessarily get the applause that Madison's performance gets. But here's why I think that, Hayden, because in the first half of the movie, his portrayal of Yvonne makes that character so like infectious. Like his energy is just like I said, it's infectious. Like you just want to
party with this guy. Yeah. He's fun. He's very silly. He has this kind of these separate cadences where it's like he can speak English, but he kind of struggles through it. So when he speaks English, it's like, you know, the conjugations are wrong.
Welcome to my aboard. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Stuff like that. Things are kind of silly. But then when he speaks Russian, you know, he's an intelligent person. He knows how to speak, right? He's well educated, I would assume, but he's kind of like, you know, he's the prototypical fuckboy, essentially.
He's the person, and you don't realize it at first, but over time you realize that he's the quintessential you'll love this person until you get to know them.
Yep.
Everyone in his life outside of his boys, right? His friend circle, everyone outside of them that knows him absolutely loathes him. So they do. Like, it's the cleaning lady rolls her eyes at him, the enforcers or whoever, the babysitters, like, they absolutely can't
the Armenian guys. And even
his parents can't stand him.
No. And even the friends he does have, they're very casual friendships, right? They're kind of like what they talk to you about in health class is like, those aren't your real friends, those are your using buddies, right? Yeah. Like, they party together, they do drugs together, they go to Vegas together. But it's, you wonder, like, if that stuff went away, would those friendships be there? And I think there's a moment where that's tested, because you get, like, the second act of this movie becomes this, like, wild goose chase trying to find this kid all around town, right?
Because he runs away and leaves her behind.
Yeah. And it's a really funny moment the way it's played, but it's also kind of devastating, because he's like, he keeps saying, like, Anora, like, come with me, like, we'll run away, like, we'll run off together, right? Like, we don't have to, my parents can't take me back home, like, we'll start a new life together. And then and she's like, her thing is she won't leave, but she's like, I don't have pants on, dude. Like, I'm not leaving the house without pants. I'm like, let me get changed. And he's just like, okay, bye. And just, like, runs away.
He literally says, okay, bye. And just runs away. So, yeah, I mean, it is a little strange how that, and it's funny how that happens. But then you're right. This whole, like, chase begins. But you see Anora at first, like, really fighting for the idea of the relationship and the marriage. But over time, as she listens to the people that are there, and again, great performances. Yuri Borisov, who plays Igor, is great in this.
Yeah, he is.
And is it Vache Tovmasian, who plays Garriok, or however you say that? The guy with the broken nose, Garrick.
Yeah,
with the broken nose. Is also really good. But I want to give a shout out just really quickly to the guy who plays what's his name? Like, the lead guy, the lead baddie.
Oh yeah.
Let's see here. I got it. Taurus.
Okay, yeah. I kept calling him oh god, I can't remember it now, but whatever the dude called him, whatever the judge called him, because the color of his suit. Do you remember that? He's like, cream suit guy.
Yeah.
It's like, creep suit guy, sit down. It's not that, but it's close.
Yep. So yeah, they go all over town trying to find him. And he ends up back at the club where he first met her.
And I think that's the thing that's funny as hell about, and also really sad, obviously, about this, but is that he goes, like, to all, they think of all these places and, like, the hobbies he has, and, like, well, he likes video games, maybe he's at the arcade, and it's so funny to me because that she says that too, because it's like the only thing that she knows about him, other than, like, the fact that, like, he enjoys, like, the only thing they do other than, like, party and, like, have sex is she's, like, watches him play Xbox sometimes.
Yep.
Which you start to realize they have such a superficial understanding of each other.
Oh yeah, they don't know each other really at all.
And I think, like, and the thing that I think is a really great choice and really great about the performance and just the script of this movie is, I think a lot of movies that have this that are about this falling out, this end of a relationship, you have a moment, right? And I think there is a moment in this where she says that she's done and she's calling it off, and she makes the decision that she's like, you know what, actually, like, I'm not fighting for this anymore. Like, you suck. Like, I want to be separated. I want this to end. But it's very, very gradual.
Yeah.
Right. And it's kind of, you see it in the subtleties of her facial expressions and the way she says things and just her attitude over this, like, crazy day where they're looking for him.
So yeah, they find him in this club. And this is where, like, this B story, like, the subplot of, like, the other, like, exotic dancer who really doesn't like Anora.
Yeah, because Anora is, like, really right. Because, like, Anora's, like, really, I mean, I don't know if popular is the right word, but she is, like, well liked among the other girls who work there and her boss. Right?
Yep.
Her boss even, like, at one point she's like, I need a week off, and he's like, you can't get a week off. Like, what the hell are you talking about? She's like, you give me a 401k, you're gonna give me a health benefits, you're gonna give me your retirement package. He's like, because he's like, if you're gonna do those things, then I'll be full time. You can tell me when to work. And he's like, all right, see you next week. Like, you know, it's very tongue in cheek. And like, but there's this one girl there that just like absolutely hates her and is like super jealous of her. And for whatever reason, and like she goes and gives Yvonne this like private dance and whatever. And like, to me, like, it is honestly like legitimately a predatory act. Like, at that point, it's not just like a shitty, selfish thing to do to like deliberately fuck with someone's marriage. But at that point, they've established like, we've kind of had this montage of like, hey, at this point, this is like the fourth club he's gone to where he's either like been kicked out for being too drunk and too belligerent, or he's not even been let in.
Yeah.
And so to me, like, it's an interesting subversion of that dynamic, because I feel like a lot of times people think about, worry about, and perhaps overinflate. I don't know the statistics, but like, I don't know. It's talked about a lot, right? Of the danger of women in these professions being assaulted. And in this scene, it's not really talked about, but I think you can make the argument that like she took advantage of him sexually in that moment because of how intoxicated he was.
A little bit, yeah. And you also see another key thing in that scene, though, is you see him putting the $100 bills, you know, into her apparel, we'll say, the exact same way and exact same place that he does it with Anora the first
time. Yep.
And that's the moment where, as a viewer, you should like not have any more questions about whether or not this dude like really, really, really values his relationship with her.
Right.
He doesn't. And yes, he's absolutely, you know, trashed, right? But that on its own would be one thing. But as the cherry on top to all the other little things we've seen.
Right.
Because even if you go back to the point where they're like in the home that isn't his, but whatever. And she's like, well, when do I get to meet your parents? And he just really shies away in a way that looking back, now, you know, like he's like, never. Because he knew that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. You know? And it's, you think like he goes to all these clubs, he goes to multiple, I think, strip clubs, right? Some are just places to dance. Others are, you know, places that have, you know, exotic dancers, sex workers, whatever. Like, not whatever. I gotta be careful. I'm not whatever, as in like those two are the same. I'm saying whatever else happens to be.
Yeah.
Right. So he, but it's comical when you think about it. Of the first thing this kid does when he loses his relationship is he's like, well, I guess I gotta get laid. Right. He's like, I'm single. He's single for like seconds, and he's like, well, I guess I gotta find someone else. And it's absurd because like his parents are like literally on the way at that point. Like they're gonna be there in a couple hours. And so he's not out there looking for love. He's out there looking for like one last hoorah before he gets sent back home. And it's so devastating because he becomes like so dismissive of her. And I think it's really a testament to this movie that there's so many like red flags of just how this relationship starts, yet you still root for it anyway. And I think it's because those performances are so compelling. You're like, maybe like if anyone could figure out a way to make it work, it would be them.
And like I said early on, I think we're also trained in movies that it does, right? Like it's happily ever after and all of that.
Yeah.
But I think we got the much more realistic version here, given all the things in play, right?
Yeah.
So we get back, they get back to Vegas, and the final like scene with them all together, where the forms are being filled out, and she just like lets him have it, and
that's the whole family have it.
And then throws the coat on him, and he's just like, oh well, so long, you know, bye America or whatever, right? And then just gives the coat away to the like person working at the desk.
Yeah.
He's so dismissive of all
which has been established, by the way, earlier, is like this is an expensive coat, because I think Igor has that line where he's like, oh, is this a mink coat?
Yep.
Or is it like fake? And she's like, it's not mink, it's like something better. It's like an even more rare animal fur. And like to her, like that's a big deal, and because like she's probably never owned anything like that and never imagined in her life she would. Right. And then, but for him, it's like he has no concept of money at all. It's like
money's a way to get what he wants.
Right.
Like that's it.
But he has no concept of its like value at all. And it's like the extreme of like, you hear these stories all the time of like a kid who spends thousands of dollars on their parents' credit card on accident on Fortnite skins because they know, or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Because they don't realize they're spending real money. And like he does that about like hundreds, if not thousands of dollars.
Oh, it's thousands easy. Yeah.
At a time. Like I'm saying, like in every instance, you know, it's absurd.
So there's also a moment there too where Igor says, I think he should apologize for basically leading her on and treating her this way and all of that. And he just goes, Yvonne goes dead silent, and the parents, the mother is just like, our family or our son does not apologize for anything. Right. And so you see like there's the final nail, right? And like, we see ourselves as so much better than you. You don't deserve apologies from him, regardless of how he treated you. All of that. And it's a little bit heartbreaking, but it's like, it's just that final nail. Igor's an interesting character because he starts out as like assaulting her basically.
Yeah. I mean, because he's physically subduing her, right? Because she's
trying to get away.
Right. The men show up to the mansion. They want her to stay with them because she knows the guy, so she might at least know where he is, right? And they're trying to find him. And like her, because of, I don't know if it's necessarily because of her profession. I think it's just like, this is instinct you have as a woman. Like she is afraid for her life. She is afraid she's going to be sexually assaulted. And that doesn't end up happening. And it's this, I think I talked about earlier, there's like scenes in this movie where like, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to laugh or be uncomfortable. And I think it's deliberately a bit of both. And I think this is like the biggest example because she's like kicking and screaming and flailing and biting people and throwing things at people and kicking people and they fall through chairs. Like it's or through glass tables. Like it's extremely slapstick. But like from her perspective, from her point of view, like she legitimately is convinced she's endangered, is about to be assaulted in that way.
Which I understand when you're trying to leave to go find your husband and they're like, we're not allowing you to leave.
There's 3 huge men.
Yeah.
One of whom has you held on his lap while you're tied.
Yep.
Like I don't think it's a big leap. I think it's.
Yeah. I mean, I think she reacts like most women, probably most anybody would in that situation.
Right. Right.
So, but over the course of the second half of the movie, Igor turns out to be probably the most empathetic character to her.
Yeah. And the most level-headed person like in this whole thing. And I think even from the beginning, like even in the mansion scene, especially before he ties her up, like you kind of get the vibe that like he isn't really invested in this. He doesn't really want to be here. He doesn't really believe or subscribe to like whatever, I don't know, crime empire this family is a part of. I mean, he even talks about like, you know, at one point someone's like, you know, like, don't you have drugs? Like, give me painkillers for this. When the guy breaks his nose and he's like, they're my grandma's drugs in my grandma's apartment. He's like, I'm not stealing from my grandma. Like, what the hell? Like, he sees himself as so outside of it, even though, like, in a court of law, he would be considered an accomplice to all this shit.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. He also says to her at one point near the end of the film, like, you should be glad you're not going to be part of this family or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, he hates all of these people pretty much. But I think the most valuable scene for him happens back in the candy store when they stop in to see Yvonne's like friends.
Yeah.
And because he's so quickly able to take the bat and then mess shit up in that store, like you can see what he's capable of if he wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But he never does, right?
He's got the killer instinct, but he doesn't. He doesn't want to kill.
She has the rape. He has the rape eyes, right? Like,
is that what she? Yeah, that's what she said about him, right?
Yeah,
and I think like that is probably like the most memorable scene in the film. I think is like when the two of them are back in that mansion alone for a night, and it's kind of like the one time that Toros like shows her kindness because he's like, whatever. So you went through all this, like, we'll fly you home. Igor will stay with you, escort you, make sure you get home safely. Like, you can stay in the mansion another night, and if you had a long day, like, get some rest. But you have to pack a ship and leave in the morning. Mm-hmm. And so they have this moment where they're talking about, like, the two of them are talking about just the day and processing it, and like yesterday being his birthday, and they're kind of just having like a nice, pleasant conversation. And they do this really subtle thing, by the way, where they make to talk about like tropes, and maybe it's just because I've watched so many bullshit Hallmark movies lately. Mm-hmm. But the news lady, like the reporter on the news, is talking about like how there's this huge winter snowstorm coming, and there's all these road closures and there's travel bans and whatever. And I'm like, bro, are they gonna like get snowed in and have a meet cute? Mm-hmm. Like, is that what's going on here? And it doesn't, but they do have this conversation where like, she just fully admits like she thought he was going to do that to her, right? Mm-hmm. And he's like, I was never going to do that. I would never do that. And she's like, why? And that's the most fascinating thing to me is that why? Because she cannot imagine someone having the opportunity to do that to her and not doing it. Like she cannot process that concept, and it's really devastating. Mm-hmm. But he kind of just like responds like, I'm not a rapist. Like that's the line. Like, I just don't do that. And it kind of causes her to become like more vulnerable with him. And it's interesting what they do here, because it's one of those movies where it's like, you think it's about Anora and Yvonne's relationship, but it's really about Anora and Igor's relationship, right? Mm-hmm. And whether or not that will blossom, I think we'll get there to the ending. But
yeah,
that dynamic is very interesting.
Yeah, one thing I want to hit on before we get to the ending is just one last thing on Yvonne. By the way, the actor there, Mark Eydelshteyn, or however we say, he just signed on for season 2 of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So,
okay, I remember. I saw he got cast in something. I couldn't remember.
He's been referred to as the Russian Timothy Chalamet.
Okay,
which I can see a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I guess. I mean, I think he's got a little work to do to get to those chops.
That level, but,
yeah, but it's it's there.
I do think that show is going to be a great fit for him.
I do,
by the way, just his comedy style.
Yep. The character, one of the great ways the movie showed Yvonne's like just selfishness and self-centered, mm-hmm. all of it, is in how he likes to have sex. Everything's very just like about me. And mm-hmm. it's just, it's more a race than a journey, Hayden. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. And it's funny because there's like even a moment where she's just like kind of turns and looks back and was like, why? Like slow down, dude. Like enjoy it. Mm-hmm. Like it doesn't have to just be like, and it's
we get the montage
ridiculous
where it's like all them them doing fun stuff together, and then there's like the 2 or 3 second clips like in the put in there of them having sex, and it's always just him like very relentlessly, shall we say.
Yeah, it's either she's in charge or he's just fucking jackhammering.
Yeah, right. So, one last thing, this little character thing that I think that actor did that I thought was great was just when she first shows up to the mansion, and she's like, "Oh, take your clothes off," and he does, and then he does like that weird backward somersault onto the bed.
Yes,
I think it's like a great, and that was 100% improvised, by the way.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah. So I think it's a great way to show that character's like, I don't know if innocence is the right word, but just like weird. He's like a child, really.
He's silly and he's profoundly unserious.
Yep.
Like he's funny to the extent, like he is just kind of charming funny, and he's he's party funny, right? He's got silly stories, makes people laugh.
Yep.
But he's also just like he can't turn it off. Like even in their first moment of like physical intimacy, like he is not taking it seriously. I don't think he's capable of taking it seriously. I don't think he has the emotional bandwidth to take anything seriously.
Well, when he asked her if she's happy, and she's like, "Yeah," and she goes, "Are you?" And he's like, "I'm always happy." And then he's telling the truth there. Like he, because why would he ever not be, right? Like he basically does whatever he wants all the time. So let's talk about the ending here. The ending, I think, was fairly, I don't think controversial is the right word, but I think divisive. There were some people that don't like it. What did you think? Because the ending is essentially like she's about to get out of the car. Then
Igor takes her home.
Her and Igor, she slides, she gets back on Igor's lap, then they start having sex. She ends up slapping him because he chokes her, right? And
no, he goes to kiss her.
Oh, he goes to kiss her. Okay, my bad.
Yes, he goes, and that's the thing that's really interesting, I think, about that to me, because that scene is, people are very much, people have different reads of it, and I think the where the divisive is coming from is that one of the reads people are making is, just kind of, I think that the director is looking down on the character and saying that Anora is basically can't help herself, or that that's all she knows how to do. And I don't think that's fair. I think, to me, what I took away from it was that, like, I think part of it is that, like, this is one of the only ways she knows how to show affection and gratitude. I think another part of it is just that, like, she is taking the initiative here, and I think she feels powerful in that. And if you think about it, like, in her, not just in her life and other relationships that we see, but I mean, her very profession as a sex worker is all other people initiate, right? I mean, she hustles a bit, like, frankly, like she hustles Yvonne a couple times and is like, well, we can, but like I have holiday rates, like, you know what I mean? She's kind of upselling. But as far, like, I don't, like, we never see her in the entire movie go after someone because she's just like, I like this person, I care about them, I want to be with them, I want to be intimate with them. And then, like, but then he goes to kiss her, which to her, she sees as a bridge too far, which is, and I think that's where I think she had, then she just gets off him and just starts crying, and he holds her. And I think, like, to me, that was a moment of revelation for herself, or realization for herself, where she realizes, like, that she has a really hard time, like, being legitimately intimate.
Yep.
Right?
Well, and that goes back to the earlier point I made about the transactional nature of all the characters in this movie, almost, right? And that's what she knew as far as intimacy goes. Intimacy is something to be essentially bought and sold, right?
Right. And Igor is really, he seems kind of shocked by the whole thing and very reserved. And he seems like he doesn't know if he should be doing this. Like, his facial expressions, it's like he can't really get into it, because you can see mentally he's like, I don't know if this is right, I don't know if this should be happening. And then, but then it goes on for a bit, and so he's like, like, this is okay, I feel comfortable, I'm gonna go kiss her, and she slaps him.
So one other thing,
like, cut to black, like, that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
The movie just abruptly ends in the middle of that.
Crying. in his arms, right? And
yep, no credits song, no fun little
nope.
outro. It's just like broom tone.
No post-credit scene either. So
Anora will return.
Anora will return. The post-credit scene is Ivan in some Russian club, doing whatever. And but one other thing that people brought up, I saw in a couple places where people took issue with the film a little bit, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it, is that some people thought that the portrayal of the sex worker Anora, saying like, oh no, I really do like this person and like when they do, these things is bad. I didn't get that here with her and Yvonne.
Like, you gotta elaborate. I guess I don't
so
know.
So it's the idea that that it empowers the type of men who are like, oh no, she really likes me and wants me to, essentially talk her and all of that. You know what I mean? So
the guy who thinks the stripper's really actually into him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I understand that point of view. I 100% do. I don't know that that's what was happening here.
I don't think so, but at the same time, I think like what this movie is trying to do is kind of demystify sex work. And
I agree.
Just treat it as like a legitimate, valid profession, and do a slice of life of what it is like to work in that field. And I think, really what they're trying to say is like every job you have has like good days at work, bad days at work, right? We've both, I mean, you more so than I, but we both work in fields where we interact with people a lot. You worked for a major retailer for over a decade. Like, you have a lot of face-to-face experience with customers, with clients, and frankly, some of them are people that, like, I'm sure
luckily
you would have nothing to do with if you weren't getting paid,
so,
right? Yeah. But you think about that, like, when your product is like sex, like that is, having a bad day at work is a lot more intense.
Yeah.
Having a client you don't like is a lot more intense. So having a client or a customer you do like is also a lot more intense. And I think that's kind of what it was saying, is that, like, I think to her, it felt euphoric because, like, for the first time with Ivan, like, she was with somebody that she could relate to because they're peers, because they both like to party. They both have this, kind of ties to Russian culture. And I think
only 2
that's
years separate them. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what she's chasing. Right.
One last question before we put a bow on this thing.
Okay.
It was alluded to a couple of times, and I didn't quite know what to make of it. Do you buy that he was really 21?
What do you mean?
So
do you think he was younger or older?
Yeah, younger. So it's just little things. It's like,
yes, because he doesn't say.
I do too.
He doesn't say he's 21. He says he's 20.
I thought he said he was 21.
He said he was 20.
Okay.
Which is interesting to me because it's like, I feel like if you're going to lie about your age, if you're a minor, you say you're 18. If you're 18, 19, or 20, you say you're 21. 20, I feel like it's just a weird age to lie about being, because you don't really gain anything from it.
And the reasons I asked were like, one, he said his parents don't want him. He's not allowed to drive the cars. They say that his room there has like spaceships in it.
Yeah.
When they're in Vegas, he doesn't do any gambling. Or no, he does. He's at the table. Yeah, that's right. I take that back. So, yeah, there were little hints dropped. I think it was supposed to be a question that was hanging in the air, but I agree with you. I think he really was the age that he said. But he's just like emotionally, in terms of emotional maturity, much, much younger.
Very stunted, right? Because he's never had to really do it. It seems like he's never really had to do anything serious. He's never had to make any decisions. He's never had to work. He's never really lost anything. So I think, and it's funny because there's this like scene where he's like asking like Anora how old she is, and she says she's 23, and he's like, oh wow, like I would have thought you were 25. Like you act like a 25-year-old, which to anyone who's like an adult, to anyone who's over the age of 21, you're like, what in the fuck does that even mean?
Yeah,
like,
what's
it
the
means
difference?
Nothing. Like, it's just, it's funny because it's the way that a child views people who are older than them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're in middle school and you think the kids who are freshmen in high school, you're like, whoa, they're so old and so they know so much. And then you get 2 years older than them and you realize no one knows shit at any age.
Right. Yeah. So, all right, let's put a bow on this thing. We really love this film.
It's great.
It is great. You should watch it. Maybe not with mom or grandma or anybody like that.
Not family friendly. It's got a lot of.
Yeah, it's not the family Christmas film.
It is not.
So, in fact, as I kind of went around looking for like audience feedback and whatnot, anybody would like. I saw a couple people that were like, when I left the theater, a bunch of like middle-aged women were around all saying they hated it and whatever. And I think part of that hating is just due to generational views of sex workers.
Mm-hmm.
Largely, I think that's a big part of it. And, Sean Baker, the screenwriter director here is, this isn't the first time he's had something to say about that line of work.
Topic. So, I feel like almost all of his movies do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and he's an exceptional filmmaker. I hope he gets a nomination for Best Director on this. I don't know if he will, but I hope he does.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm really curious to see. I'm excited for Oscar season because I feel like there's a couple movies that I'm really rooting for and would be happy to win. So I'm glad we finally saw this, man. It's just been. We like every movie, like we've just been on top of the zeitgeist for, and so it's like this is really the only we've really had to catch up on, and I don't know.
Yeah,
it feels good to be caught up.
Shout out to Ben on our team who lives in Chicago and was able to actually go see this when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had a review up on our site for quite a while, so go check that out as well, strangeawesomegames.com. And yeah, the other thing I just wanted to say real fast about award seasoning is like, I feel like there's actually some really good movies this year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the last few years, especially coming out of COVID, we had a couple where it was like, there was some really good stuff, right? But there were also some that you're like, I don't know, in a quote normal year, I'm not sure all of these would be here, right? For that picture.
Yeah.
This year, I think everybody that makes it absolutely deserves it.
And I think there's going to be some that don't make it that
probably, yeah, I agree. Even movies like Conclave, really solid and could be nominated. And, obviously The Brutalist we know about, Dune Part 2. There's just a lot this year that is really good. So, okay. Again, we gave this thing a 9. We'll run through the scores for categories real fast. We kind of weave through all of it, but the weave. Characters 8.5 out of 10. Cast performances 9.5 out of 10. Just superb across the board. Look, sound, and feel a 9. And this felt like a really strong, like on the ground in New York type of movie.
And it's shot so well that I feel like you forget it's like a low budget independent film because they do a really good job of the making you see this like wealthy world. The only thing that I knock against this movie for Look, Sound, and Feel is I thought some of the licensed music was just like distractingly low quality. Like
I'll say
not the diegetic stuff. Like the stuff that was playing in the clubs all made sense. There were some bangers on there I recognized, like from the gay bars I go to and stuff. Like I thought that was all pretty good and authentic, but there was just like there's like the montage they have where they're like in Vegas and they're in that like mall that has like the LED screen with like the fireworks going off. Like the song they're playing in there feels very much like the joke my partner made is like this is like the kind of song they play when like people get together on like Couple the Thruple, like the Peacock dating show. And like I kind of heard it, I kind of saw it, I kind of got that vibe, but at the same time I wonder if like the tackiness of it was deliberate because
I think
their relationship is so tacky. So
and I will say again to the credit of the actors that I didn't even notice that some of the song choices weren't great. You're right now that I look back on it, but I was so like caught up in just what they were doing that it didn't really matter. And then finally, Intangibles 8.5. I think this is going to be a rewatchable film. I wouldn't say it's going to be like a, all the time rewatch, but I'll definitely see this again at some point.
For sure.
So, for a total of 9 out of 10, we really liked it. You probably will too. So definitely see it. Let us know what you think in the comments and check out other movie reviews. We now probably won't have another one of these until after the new year. When we'll have some making up to do. We'll have to talk a complete baby Ratu.
Jeez.
Which is a complete unknown, baby girl, and Nosferatu in that order.
I'm genuinely excited for all 3 of those movies now. It's finally hit.
Yeah. I was worried whether or not you're going to come around on Baby Girl or not, but you seem to be there, so we're good. Lessons to be learned in that movie, I'm sure. But anyway, thanks everybody for joining us, and we will talk to you soon.
Take care, y'all.
Bye.